Have you ever noticed that perfectionism tends to hold you back instead of actually making things perfect? Hey there, I'm Xannie. I make content about cats, crafts, and reveal the truths about mental health that most people won't talk about. Today, I want to unpack perfectionism in perhaps a bit of an unusual way while I make this dress. Before we get into the perfectionism part, let me just set the scene and give you a little bit of backstory. So a few weeks ago, I started working on this dress for an event. Now, having made my own wedding dress a few years ago, I thought it would be fun to take the knowledge from that project to the next level and make my first ever strapless dress. But for those of you who don't know, if you are larger chested like I am, then wearing or making a strapless dress is no easy feat. I have never found a strapless bra that actually held everything together. The only thing that's ever worked is a corset or a corseted bodice. And so my original plan was to make a custom built-in corset lining for this dress. Unfortunately, after several attempts to figure out the bodice pattern, I started to get frustrated because I realized that it was going to take a lot of time and many different iterations of the pattern before I got the fit right. So I took a step back from the project to problem solve. When I thought about it, I realized I actually already own a corset that fits me well and could go unnoticeable under the dress. Why not just make the dress to go over the corset I already know fits me instead of spending forever perfecting this lining that literally no one but me is ever going to see? So that's what I did. I was able to finalize the bodice pattern really quickly and get started on the dress, which brings us to the perfectionism part of this conversation. The kind of perfectionism I'm talking about isn't like, oh, I like things to be done well, or, I'm just a little bit detail oriented. No. What I'm talking about today is the kind of perfectionism that makes your life extremely difficult. The kind that tells you you are an absolute failure if you don't do something perfectly. The kind that is so rigid that you can't tolerate it and completely fall apart when things don't go exactly the way that you envision it. That's the kind of perfectionism that I used to struggle with a lot. And in the past, I never would have considered finding an alternate solution for this dress. I used to be so fixated on the mental image of perfection that I never even stopped to consider whether what I was doing was actually a good idea or not. I would sacrifice sleep, family time, and often my larger goals just in order to get something to fit my mental standard, whatever I thought it should be. Now, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having high standards, but context matters. Like with this dress, if I were making it for a client and making a built-in corset lining was part of the order, then I would take the time to get it right. And yeah, while I hoped I could challenge myself a little while making this dress, the primary goal was just to have a nice garment to wear to a party. Making that lining would have been fun, but my time and energy are limited, and I have way too many other things going on right now for that project in its original plan to have been realistic. Sometimes good enough is exactly where you need to be. I used to think my perfectionism was just the pursuit of greatness, and that it was what gave me a good reputation as a seamstress. But as I became more aware of myself, I realized the unfortunate truth. It made me inflexible and fragile. I was so enamored with my own ideas and things being a specific way that I didn't stop to consider alternatives, even when those alternatives would have yielded the same, if not better results. I've heard people romanticizing perfectionism as this beautifully tragic thing. And I've fallen into that trap myself, thinking things like, oh, I just care so much about things being good, and aren't I so ambitious, and I just work so hard and never have time for me. Isn't that so sad? But honestly, I'm not sure that it's sad so much as it's a sign that we have a lot of healing and growing to do. And doing that work is crucial, not only for ourselves, but in my experience, perfectionism has been pretty damaging to the people around me. I'd get really attached to things meeting my standards because I wanted them to be good and I wanted others to see my value. Especially when creating gifts, I wanted to see people's faces light up in amazement. That made all of my effort feel worthwhile. But I couldn't contain my stress. I would take on too much, refuse to compromise, and then I'd lash out at those around me for not being more sympathetic to my workload, even though I was the one who took it all on to begin with. Even when I wasn't bleeding out my stress onto everyone else, perfectionism damaged my relationships in other ways. I've literally missed parts of Christmas celebrations because I was holed up in my office rushing to finish everyone's Christmas gifts. I was thinking I'm working so hard to make everyone happy, but that's not truly what would have made them happy. They just wanted to spend time with me. In my pursuit of perfection, I often sacrificed the very things I was working towards. I convinced myself that my commitment to meeting my own standards was about how others perceived me. But the fact that I sacrificed my relationships in favor of those standards reveals that it's not actually about those relationships, at least not entirely. It was really more about control. Making something a certain way was something that I could control. While this realization is not the most pleasant, I can also have grace for myself. I lived for many years with extreme emotional instability, and I think perfectionism was probably a refuge from all that chaos. It was the one thing I had control over when I did not have skills to regulate my emotions. I don't mention this to excuse my past behavior. It's more about letting go of unnecessary self-judgment. In my experience, high levels of negative self-talk don't actually motivate me to do better. I usually just spiral in shame into a puddle, which brings me to differentiating between what I'm calling ambition and perfectionism. I actually couldn't think of a better word it could be ambition, drive. You can let me know if there's a better word that you associate with this, but I want to differentiate between ambition and perfectionism because in my experience, it's not the fact that I want to achieve things that's the problem. It's the belief that anything less than hitting my goal is a commentary on my worth and value as a person. I think this distinction is really important because there's nothing wrong with ambition or driving to succeed. It's critical to consider what our motivation is. Ambition says, I'm doing this difficult thing, I'm working to achieve something because I'll feel better about myself, I'll accomplish X, Y, or Z goal. Perfectionism says, if you don't do this thing perfectly, then you're worthless, you're weak, you are a failure as a human being. Ambition encourages us to strive for goals using positive motivation. It doesn't punish us with negative self-talk if we decide to change our plans. Ambition might not be satisfied with coming in second place, but unlike perfectionism, which will have you spiraling into a deep pit of shame and despair, ambition says, what could we do differently next time? Ambition allows you to approach yourself with non-judgmental curiosity. Obviously, perfectionism is still a little bit of a struggle for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been frustrated by having to change my plans. I would have just said, oh, here's the thing, we got to change the plans. Regardless, I am working on shifting my perspective. So rather than being motivated by or purely by the fear of failure, I am also being motivated positively towards the things that I want because, fear of failure can be something that motivates you to act. But when it's the only thing that motivates you to act, at least in my experience, it's pretty unpleasant. Life feels high stress, high despair all the time. So I'm definitely working on trying to be motivated positively towards things rather than just away from the things I don't like. And I think one of the things that helps me is remembering that perfectionism really only gives me an illusion of control. And what I mean by that is that, yeah, sure, like doing things with my hands, I have control over something. And that's not an unhealthy thing. But if I am unable to adapt to new things that come my way, that's not real control. It just means I'm fragile. I'm not out of control if something happens and I need to change my plans. Having the flexibility to adapt is, in my opinion, a much more robust form of control. Being able to recognize, oh, I don't actually have time to do all of this. I need to make an alternate plan. And hey, flexibility doesn't come naturally to everyone. It certainly did not come naturally to me. I think I've been a pretty rigid person for most of my life, but most of us can become more adaptable through practice. Learning problem-solving skills has really helped a lot. when my expectations and reality clash. And a lot of the time, problem solving for me just means taking a step back from the situation. It's a simple concept to think about, taking a step back and brainstorming a list of options. But when you're not used to doing that, it's very difficult to do that in practice. I am happy to do a video about problem solving in more detail. If you think that would be useful to you, let me know in the comments down below. I think one of the challenging aspects to this conversation is that there's a lot of content and sort of opinions out there that I think go too far in the anti-perfection direction, in the sense where it's like, oh, anytime I'm in a situation that's uncomfortable or I'm working hard, like I shouldn't have to work this hard. I'm just gonna stop it. Right? And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how to actually get the most out of your life in a way that's satisfying to you. Because the problem that I have found with perfectionism is that, as much as I wish that I could inject an infinite amount of time into my schedule to accommodate every little thing that I want to do and making everything absolutely perfectly flawless all the time, I do not have that magic power. The reality is we often have multiple goals going on at the same time, and we have to decide which one is the most important. Unfortunately, we cannot always do every single goal to its absolute highest possible standard. Often, doing a good job is better than doing a perfect job. One of the things that my best friend told me years ago that really helped me with perfectionism was a 95 and 100 is still an A. And look, don't get me wrong. If your goal is to be valedictorian, or there's something about getting 100 that allows you to do certain things that you want to do in life, go for it. Put in the extra effort. But if your goal is to just get good grades and it's going to take you a really long time to get those extra 5 points, is it really worth it? Right? This is not a conversation about let's not have goals or let's kill ourselves to meet our goals, right? It's really a question of priorities and using our resources to the best of our ability, because unfortunately time is finite. And if we spend it all striving for perfection without stopping to think about whether it's actually getting us closer to our goals or not, we may sacrifice our entire lives, not for nothing, but to end up someplace other than where we intended to go. It's just important when you're working so hard to take the time periodically to step back and make sure that what you're doing and all the hard work and energy you're putting in is actually getting you closer to the goals that you have in mind, and not just an exercise in having more control. Because I have gotten stuck in that trap way too many times, and if you can learn from my mistakes, I really hope you do. And voila, I finished the dress. Hee. Isn't it pretty? I'm really happy with how it came out. It does have removable straps, so it is a strapless dress, but I added these removable straps because when I was trying it on, I think I just ate something or I wasn't doing great. Anyway, I don't know. I was a little bit more bloated than when I first had the corset on and was putting the dress together, and I realized, ooh, if I'm going to a party and for some reason the corset and my stomach are just not being friends, I want the option to be able to switch into a normal bra. So this was sort of another problem solved, right? So this is a way that I could have the strapless dress, but it also transforms just in case. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you got a nugget of truth and wisdom to take with you on your journey. And this brings us to the cat portion of every episode. If this is your first time watching, this is going to seem kind of random to you, but at the end of every episode, I like to say hello, introduce you to one of my cats, because cats are cute and adorable. And if you're working on your mental health, sometimes you just need a break to focus on cute, fluffy animals. So let me introduce you to my little baby girl, Loki. She's 1 year old. She just turned 1 in April. Look at that pretty face. Oh my goodness. Hi, sweet girl. She is a bit of a spaz. She's kind of sleepy right now, but she almost always has a surprised look on her face.
Here is some footage that we got the other day from her on the stairs.
This is actually relatively tame for Loki. It's just hard to get footage of her normal spastic routines because, well, sometimes they happen at like 2 a.m. Oh, there's Vienna! They're so cute.
Anyway, so as you can see, she is a bit of a spaz nugget, but we love her so much.
You gonna say goodbye to the people? She's like, what people? She doesn't have a concept of cameras. Crimson, who you met last week, I don't know if he has a concept of cameras in the same way that we understand them, but he definitely knows something's going on because he'll happily sit there, but only when the camera's rolling. It's probably something to do with my behavior that tips him off. I have 3 kittens. I don't think they get it yet. Ooh, look, there's her wild face. You're not gonna wave. It's okay. You don't have to. You're a cat. You just be there and look beautiful. Yeah, you just be there and look beautiful. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.